coming up in all angles. Fire after fire after fire in institutions housing our children. Is there a systemic problem? And what's being done by those in charge? Thank you so much for joining us for this edition of All Angles. And in studio with me today to discuss these very important issues, we have with us attorney at law and child rights specialist Ricardo Sancroft. Also with us is Rosalie Gage-Gray, who is Chief Executive Officer of the CPFSA, what used to be the Child Development Agency. Emilia Banks is with us, the Public Relations Officer of the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Roger Malcolm also here, Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice. And as always, welcome to our viewers who are joining us on onespotmedia.com. Just before we go to our guests though, Kalisha Williams has this overview.
Fire gutting the Jamaica National Children's Home in Papine, St. Andrew Friday night, displacing and traumatizing 40 children.
I heard one or two kids say, fire. And I looked in the direction and I observed from one of the dormitory rooms, bright light, fire coming from that particular section, and we responded immediately.
40 firefighters battled the inferno, and thankfully no life was lost. But it reignited an all too familiar conversation, the frequency of fires at facilities for children island-wide. Over the years, scores of young boys and girls have been placed in danger in institutions they called home, and some have died. Friday night's fire is the 6th at facilities for children across the island over the past decade, leaving a trail of grief and devastation in their wake. 7 girls died in a fire at the Armadale Juvenile Correctional Facility in 2009. Then Glen Hope Place of Safety caught fire in 2011.
From all reports, it appears that a young girl might have ignited a mattress.
Worsley Home for Girls in 2015, Clifton Boys Home in 2017.
Everybody is in shock. Some cried, some... all different type of emotional feelings they have.
Then in 2018, 2 children died at the Walker's Place of Safety after fire broke out in the still of the night.
Feel it to my heart. But the kids were calling out my name. People put nice and they pick them run out of my youth next door or the upstairs places to take out some of the kids.
Why are these fires happening, and what measures are being put in place to prevent them? In 2018, after the massive fire at the Walker's Place of Safety, Prime Minister Andrew Holness promised that he would instruct the Youth Ministry to review all such institutions across the island.
That when incidents like these happen, it triggers an administrative response, which is to review what actually happened, from whether or not the building was appropriate, from whether or not we need to spend more resources to build better facilities, to see whether or not there was negligence, and just to make sure, as I've said before, that the places of safety are actually safe places.
The Child Protection and Family Services Agency recently announced that the review was done. However, the details have not been made public. Kalisha Williams for All Angles.
Thank you so much, Kalisha. I'm going to start with Emilia Banks, because when you spoke to me earlier this week on radio, Mr. Banks, you said it sounds like a lot of fires, but you are saying not cause for concern in terms of numbers. Tell me why you said that.
All right. When we look at the rest of the world, for example, you would notice that it would appear as if we're having one per year. When we research other jurisdictions, you will realize that we are way below what other jurisdictions are suffering from. And I am not one of those persons who like to use other jurisdictions as a bar or where we set the level. But when you look at it, a lot of these places are way past their time in terms of when they were built, for example. Some of these places were built back in the 1970s. When you look at the number of students that they were supposed to accommodate versus what they're accommodating now, and when you look on the fact that we have, on record at our office, we have 80 such facilities. And over the past 10 years, I think, we've seen fires in 6 of them. Certainly, one fire is way more than what we would want to have. But when we put everything in the scope of things, it's not alarming.
Here's the thing. I've also since been reminded of the SOS Children's Village fire in 2006, in which 2 children died, to be added to those. Here's the thing, though. In your response just now, you actually gave 2 reasons for concern. One, that a lot of these homes are housed in older buildings,
Right.
which seem to be inherently unsafe in some situations. And 2, you mentioned the issue of capacity. I would also add to that, surely we can't decide that there is nothing to be concerned about if we don't know what's going on. And in several of these cases, I was going through and trying to find out what was the cause of the fire. And several of them seem to be still undetermined. So then, doesn't all that negate your starting statement, which is that it's nothing alarming?
Not necessarily, no. And when we look at them that they are undetermined, it doesn't necessarily mean that something underlying is there that is going to cause all of the facilities to go up in flames. A lot of the times, what you find happening is when we say undetermined for a fire investigation, you'll find that sometimes the facility, the scene is disturbed. So when we go in there, that purity that is supposed to be maintained for us, when we go back there, if a person disturbs the situation, then it wouldn't be prudent for you to say this is what you found, because something could have been placed, something could have been taken out. So a lot of the times what you find is that because the scenes are not protected, that is what we have to put in our report.
All right, back up a little bit. What are some of the reasons why you would have a fire in a building?
Electrical is certainly one of the things that we
Right.
have to look at. Arson is certainly something that
Right.
we have to look at. And it could very well mean that, the 2 main ones are electrical and arson, to be honest with you. When we look at residential fires in Jamaica, taking it out of the scope of what we're looking at, 70 to 80% of the fires in Jamaica, residential fires, are electrical based.
So wouldn't that be cause for concern if we're having fires caused by electrical installations, or if, God forbid, we have some madman out there setting fires? Wouldn't either of those be significant causes for concern? An electrician had said to me, look, house not burned down just so. Is the electricals either not in order
Right.
or in need of upgrading?
Right, and those are certainly 2 other things, which is why when we go to inspect these facilities, we always point out to them that, listen, you need to get these things in order. We always point out, and generally speaking, as a matter of fact, we always point out to persons that if your house has been wired, if the facility has been wired over 5 years, you need to get a certified and a licensed electrician to come in and do a general check of the facility to make sure that everything is still working the way it should.
In 2014, the Auditor General, though, said that the fire brigade was not faithfully conducting follow-up to ensure that owners of specified buildings adhere to fire safety standards, and said that a review of 52 inspection files showed that 85% of them did not meet required fire safety standard for certification. So wouldn't that include the children's homes?
That was 2014. We were the first ones to get that. We would have made sure that following off that would not reach us again. And a part of the problem with these things, I must point out as well, is that...
So have you made sure that it don't reach you again?
Yes.
In the
I'm
case
sure
of
that.
every single one of these facilities that burned down, can you say that?
I can tell you that all the facilities, the unfortunate one that we just had, we were there a week prior to. As a matter of fact, we were there on a Monday with them. And all the 80 facilities that I mentioned earlier, we have been there in the past year.
And they were certified.
They are not all certified. There's a difference, however, between certified and conforming. you are conforming to the regulation and you're in the process of applying. A lot of these facilities, being honest with you, straight up, they don't have the basic fee to even apply for it. That doesn't mean that they are not in conformity. It just means that they don't have the application
I'm not following
fee.
this at all. Help me with this. Help me with
What
this.
I'm saying is, you are in conformity.
Yes.
So we have inspected the facility and we are saying to you, you are good, you're fine. You now need to come
What
in.
does that mean, though?
You
When
are,
you say you
you've
are
met
good,
the
what they have?
requirements. You've met the
Which are
requirements
what?
in terms of fire safety. It's difficult for me to point out all the things, but we have different things that we
Does that include
look at.
electrical certification?
We basic, because remember now we are not electricians.
Understand.
So we look
I mean,
we
is
look
there a
at the basic
requirement for
things.
them to produce a certificate to say within the past year or 5 or whatever we've been inspected and our electricals pass? Is that part of your process?
We will ask for that. It's not
But
something
you don't
that
always
is.
get it.
It's not something that is required when we're looking at the
Why
electrical.
not?
No, when we're looking at
If
the
that's a
electrical
major
part.
cause of fires, how is it that that wouldn't be required?
Right, but what it is that we're looking for when we're looking at the electrical part, we will go to the panel box, for example. We make sure that the panel boxes are labeled. We make sure that the things that we can see and understand.
You all certified electricians?
That's the problem, because we are not certified electricians.
So why not request
We
a
leave
certificate
that-
from a certified electrician?
And that is why we leave that to the government electrical inspectorate
So how can you
to
be
take care of that
conforming
part of it.
if you don't have that?
The basics that we are looking for would not go in depth into what the requirements are from an electrical perspective. What we are there looking for is from a safety perspective and a fire safety
All
perspective.
right, hold that thought, Mr. Banks. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're bringing everybody else. All right, remember our hashtag is TVJ All Angles. We're talking fire, safety, prevention issues at the institutions housing our children. Soon come.